Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Please come in, sit down, open your Siddurim, get comfortable. We're going to begin on page 11 with Lechu Neranena, page 11. Lechu neranena, lechu neranena, lechu neranena, ladonai. Lechu neranena, lechu neranena, lechu neranena, ladonai. Naria, naria, litzor ishenu, nekad mafanav betoda. Naria, litzor ishenu, Bizmirot narialo, lechu neranena, lechu neranena, lechu neranena, ladonai, lechu neranena, lechu neranena, lechu neranena, ladonai, ki el gadol. Arabaim shanakud bador, va'omar am tohev levavhem, vehem lo yadu derachai, asher nishbati v'api, im yavun el menuchati. If we could quiet down in the back, thank you. Page 13. Shiru ladonai, shir chadash, shiru ladonai, kol haaretz, shiru ladonai, baruchu shemo, basru miyom leyom yeshuato, sapru vagoyim kevodo, bechol ha'amim niflotav, ki gadol Adonai, umlal me'od, norahu, al kol Elohim, yai, ki kol Elohe ha'amim elilim, v'adonai shamayim asa, hod v'hadar lifanav, oz v'tiferet, big migdasho, havu ladonai, mishpechot amim, havu ladonai, kavod va'oz, havu ladonai, kevod shemo, seu minacha, uva'u lechatzrotav, ay, ishtachavu ladonai, behatrat kodesh, chilu mipanav, kol haaretz, imru vagoyim, Adonai malach, afti kontevel, balatimot, yadin amim, bemesharim, ismuchu hashamayim, betagel haaretz, Hiram hayam, umlo, yalo sadai, lechol asher bo, ay, az yiranenu, kolat seyar, lifnei Adonai, kiva, lishpot haaretz, ishpot tevel, betzedek, ve'amim be'emunato, yai, lai, yai, lai, Lai, yai, lai, yai. Page 15. Adonai malach tagel haaretz, yismechuim rabim. Anan v'rofel sevigad tzedek mishpat. Or Zarua, page 16 on the bottom of the page.
Or Zarua, la tzadik, Uyishrelev simcha. Or zarua latzadik. Uyishrelev simcha. Or zarua latzadik. Uyishrelev simcha. Uyishrelev simcha. Or zarua latzadik. Uyishrelev simcha. Uyishrelev simcha.
Simchut tzadikim b'Adonai v'hodu lezecher kodsho. Page 17.
Shiru Adonai shir chadash ki niflaot asa. Hoshia lo yaminu uzroa kodsho. Ay ay ay. Hodia Adonai Yeshuato le'enei hagoyim gilat tzidkato. Zachar chasto ve'emunato leveit Yisrael. Yalai la 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 la. Yalai la 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 la. Yalai la 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 la. Yalai la la. Yalai la 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 la. Zachar chasto. Lifnei Adonai kiva lishpot haaretz, yishpot tevel b'tzedek, v'yamim b'mehesharim. Page 19. Adonai malach yirgezu amim, yoshev kruvim tanuhu haaretz, Adonai b'tzion gadol, v'ramhu al kol ha'amim. Romamu, page 20. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu lehar kodsho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu lehar kodsho. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu Romemu Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu Romemu. Ya la la ya la la ya la 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 ya la la ya la 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 ya la la la.
We rise from Mizmor LeDavid, page 21.
Mizmor LeDavid, havu l'Adonai bnei Elim, havu l'Adonai kavod va'oz, hay hay hay, havu l'Adonai kevod shemo, ishtachavu l'Adonai behadrat kodesh. Kol Adonai al hamayim el hakavod yirim. Adonai al hamayim rabim. Kol Adonai bakoach. Ay ay ay. Kol Adonai behadar. Kol Adonai shover arazim. Vayshaber Adonai et arzei Havanon, vayarkidem kemo egel Levanon, veSiryon kemo ven re'emim. Hay hay hay, kol Adonai chotzev lavotesh, kol Adonai yachil midbar. Yachil Adonai midbar kadesh, kol Adonai yechol elayalot, vayechesov ye'arot uvheichalot, kulo omer kavod. Hay hay hay, Adonai lamabo yashav, vayeshev Adonai melech leolam. Adonai Oz Le'amo Iten Adonai Yivarech Et Amo V'Shalom Yai Lai 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 Yai Lai 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 Yai Lai 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 Yai Lai 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 Lai.
Please be seated. We continue with Lecha Dodi, page 23.
Lecha Dodi likrat kala Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Shamor v'zachor bedibur echad hishmiyanu el hamiuchad Adonai echad u'shemo echad l'shem u'tiferet ve'letila. Lecha Dodi likrat kahala Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelecha ki mekor haberacha merosh mikeden nesucha sof maaseh b'machshava tchila. Lecha Dodi likrat kahala Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Mikdash melech ir melucha kumitzei mitoch ha'afecha rav lach shevet be'emet ha'vecha vehu yachamo alayichem lahei. Lecha Dodi likrat kala Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Hitna ari me'afar kumi livshi bigdei Tifartecha mi al yad ben ishai beit halach mikorva el nafshi ge'ala. Lecha Dodi likrat kahala Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Hitori kiva orech Kumi ori uri shir daberi kavod Adonai alayich nigla. Lecha Dodi likrat kahala Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lo tevoshi velo tichalmi ma tishtochachi u'ma atemi bach yechasu aniei ami v'nivdata Ir atila. Lecha Dodi likrat kala Pnei Shabbat nekabela. V'hayu lishisa shosayich v'rachakul kol mevalayich yasis alayich Elohai kimsos chatan al kala. Lecha Dodi likrat kala Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Yamin u'smol tifrotzi ve'et Adonai ta'aritzi al yad ish ben parsi ve'nismecha ve'nagila. Lecha Dodi likrat kala Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Boi v'shalom ateret ba'ala gam besimcha uve'tzola toch emunei am segula. Boi kala Lecha Dodi likrat kala Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Ay 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 la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la la la.
Please be seated. We continue with Mizmor Shir, page 27.
מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולזמר לשמך עליון, ולזמר לשמך עליון, להגיד בבוקר חסדך ואמונתך בלילות, עלי עשור ועלי נבל, עלי היגיון וכינור. מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולזמר לשמך עליון, ולזמר לשמך עליון.
מה גדלו
מעשיך
ים,
מאוד עמקו מחשבותיך, הללויה, הללויה. מה גדלו מעשיך ים, הללויה, הללו. מאוד עמקו מחשבותיך, הללויה, הללויה.
ישבר לידה. צדיקתה מה יפרח, כארז בלבנון יזכה, שתולים בבית אדוני, בחצרות אלוהינו יפריחו, עוד ינובון בשיבה, דשנים ורעננים יהיו, להגיד כי ישר אדוני צורי, ולא עוולתה בו. Page 29. Adonai malach geut lavesh, lavesh. Eidotecha nemnu meod, levetecha nava kodesh, Adonai leorech yamim. Mourner's Kaddish, page 30. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shmei rabbah, v'alma divrach kulteh v'yamlich malchuteh, v'chayechon uv'yomechon, uv'chaydecha beit Yisrael, ba'agala uv'yizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mevarach leolam ulamei almaya, Yitbarach, v'yishtabach, v'yitpa'ar, v'yitramam, v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar, v'yitaleh, v'yitalal, shemed kudusha b'richu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran v'yalma v'yimru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. We rise for the Baruch Hu, page 39. Baruch Hu et Adonai hamevorach. Baruch Adonai hamvorach leolam vahed. Please be seated. Baruch atah Malkam Hashem. Uma'avir yom u'mevin laila, uma'avdil ben u'mevin laila, Adonai tzvot shemo, el chai v'kayam, tamid lokalenu le'olam va'ed, Baruch atah Adonai, ha'ma'ariv aravim, ahavat olam, beit Yisrael, Amchavta, Torah u'mitzvot, chukim u'mishpatim, Otanu limadita. Alekein Adonai Eloheinu, v'shokvenu uvkumenu, nasiach bechukecha, v'nismach b'divrei Toratecha, uv'mitzvotecha, le'olam va'ed. Ki hem chayenu, ve'orech yameinu, ve'orech yameinu. Uvahem nege yomam v'layla, yomam v'layla. V'avatecha al tasu mimenu lo'olamim, baruch ata Adonai, ohev amo Yisrael.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha, v'chol levacha, v'chol nafshecha, v'chol meodecha, v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele, asher anochi mitzavacha, hayom al levavecha, v'shinantam levanecha, v'dibarta bam, v'shivtecha b'veitecha, uv'lechtecha v'derech, uv'shochbecha uv'kumecha, uv'kshartam leot al yadecha, v'hayu letotafot b'neinecha, uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha, uv'hisharecha, v'haya im shemot tishmot. Adonai Elohechem Emet, Emet ve'emuna kol zot, Emet ve'emuna kol zot, Emet ve'emuna, Emet ve'emuna, Emet ve'emuna kol zot, Ki hu Adonai. Page 44. Umalchuto baratzon kibor alehem. Moshe uvnei Yisrael chanu shira b'simcha rabba v'amru chulam. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai. Mi kamocha nehedar b'kodesh nora tehilot o sefele nora tehilot o sefele. Malachutecha rovanecha, bokerim lifnei Moshe, ze'eli anu v'amru, Adonai imloch le'olam va'ed, v'ne'emar, kifada Adonai Yaakov, u'lo mi'achazak mimenu, baruch ata Adonai, gal Yisrael. Page 45. Hashki ve'nu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom. Ushmor teitenu uvoin l'chaim u'l'shalom me'ata v'yad olam. Uvros aleinu sukat shlomecha. Baruch ata Adonai, hapore sukat shalom, aleinu v'yal kol amo Yisrael, v'yal Yerushalayim. I'd like to invite the children here. Rachel, you want to come down? Come up.
Come on up.
Come. Don't be shy. We got lots today. Come.
Please rise. The Shumru is on page 46.
Enter. You know how to start it? Ready? Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et HaShabbat
לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת ויהי נפש, שבת ויהי נפש, שבת ויהי נפש, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, בעלמא דברה קירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בהגלה, בהגלה, ובזמן כהריב, דמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך, לעולם לעולמי עלמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל, שמי קודשה בריחו לעילה, עם כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דמירן בעלמא, דמרו amen. We continue silently with the Amidah, page 47. We continue with Ma'ain Sheva, page 53. Vayechulu hashamayim v'haaretz v'chol tzevam vayechol Elohim bayom hashvi melachto asher asa vayishpot bayom hashvi mikol melachto asher asa vayevarech Elohim et yom hashvi Vaykadesh oto Ki vo shavat mikol melachto, asher bara Elohim la'asot. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu v'le'avotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el HaGadol HaGibor v'Hanara, El Elyon, Konei Shamayim va'aretz, Magen Avod bidvaro, Mechaye Metim b'mamaro, Ha'el HaKadosh she'en kamohu, Hameniach le'amo, B'yom Shabbat kodsho, Kivam ratza lehaniach lahem, Kivam ratza lehaniach lahem, Lefanav na'avod bi'irav v'fachad, V'nodeh lishmo b'chol yom etamid, Me'on ha'berachot, El ha'hodaot, Adon HaShalom, Mekadesh HaShabbat, Varech Shevi, Umeniach Bigdusha, Le'amedu Shnei Oneg, Zecher, Lemase V'Reishit. Eloheinu v'le'avotenu, V'etzevim nuchatenu, Kadeshenu v'mitzotecha, V'tein chalkenu v'toratecha, Sabenu mituvecha, v'samchenu b'shuatecha, v'taher libenu li'ovdecha, be'emet, v'hanchilenu Adonai Eloheinu, b'hava v'ratzon Shabbat kodshecha, v'yanu chuva Yisrael mikadshei shemecha, Baruch atah Adonai, mikadesh HaShabbat. Yitkadav v'yikadash shmei rabbah, v'yalma divrak yul tevim lichmachutei, b'chayechon v'yomechon, v'chaydecha beit Yisrael, Bal Galav Izman Kariv V'imru Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabba Mevarach Le'alam Le'al Me'al Maya Yitbarach V'yishtabach V'yitpa'ar V'yitram V'yitnaseh V'yitadar V'yitarev V'ytalal Shmei D'Kudisha B'richu Le'ela Min Kol Birchata V'Shurata Tushbechata V'nechemata Da'amiran B'yalma V'imru Amen. Titkabal Tzodahon Uvodon L'Kol Yisrael Kodom Avon Divishmaya V'imru Amen. Yehi Shalom Rabba Min Shemaya V'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav hu yaseh shalom. Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. This is the only Kiddush we're doing tonight, so please, there's plenty to go around. You're staying for dinner. It's a wonderful, fragrant Bordeaux. We decanted it for all of you. It'll be really opened. 2023. The water's out there for washing your hands. I will get. Do you think it doesn't have to be completely defrosted? I know. Is it frozen? I know. No. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Really want to thank Jeff and Kenneth for passing the grape juice out and using the French method. Very elegant. Kiddush, page 55. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, porei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, Asher Kiddushanu Mitzvotav L'Ratzevanu V'Shabbat Kodsho B'Ahavav Ratzon Inchilanu Zikaron L'Maaseh L'Reishit Ki hu yom techila lemikrai kodesh, zecher litziat Mitzrayim. Ki vanu v'acharta, liotanu kidashta, mikol ha'amim. V'shabbat kodshecha, v'ahava u'v'ratzon, hinchaltanu. Baruch atah Adonai, mekadesh ha-shabbat. L'chaim. Michelle, I knew it was you. I knew it was you. Even with the mask on. Josh leads us in Aleinu, page 56.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, לתת גדולה ליוצא בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוצר הארץ, ומשה וקרוב השמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו, ושכינתו זו, בגבהי מרומים. הוא אלוהינו, הינוד, אמת מלכנו, אפס זולתו, כתוב בתורתו, וידעת היום, וידעת היום, והשבות אל לבבך לבך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל, ויל הארץ, ויל הארץ מתחת עינות, עינות.
על כן נקווה לך אדוני אלוהינו.
ככתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא, ביום ההוא, יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו, ושמו, ושמו אחד, ושמו אחד.
In the coming week, we will observe the following yortzites: David Aldef, Loretta Arnold, Hinda August, Yanti Calvo Barrow, Rachel Barrow, Lawrence Barsher, Arthur Bavarnik, Sadie Brasham, Harry Brody, Luis Castellanos, Bebe Cohen, Simon Dadone, Fred DeJong, Gustav Falkenstein, William Farrand, Alexander Glantz, Ben Goldstein, Sarah Goodman, Edward Grunbaum, Uzi Halevi, David Israel, Manny Jacobs, Martin Katz, Irving Keller, Oscar Levinson, Paul Malakoff, Sylvia Miller, Goldie Mintz, Susan Pernick, Nate Posen, Marty Pulda, Minnie Rifkin, Joel Rogel, Walter Rosenstock, Moshe Solomon, Eugene Schlesinger, Magda Schlesinger, Simon Schiffman, Regina Silverberg, Yetta Sobel, Mayor Verone, Riva Weinstein, Nat Weinstein, Eric Jacob Weiss, Frank Winston, and Muriel Zeidman. We also observe the yortzeit of First Lieutenant, United States Army Air Force, Ralph Ginsburg, who entered service from New York City. He was killed in action on November 29th, 1943, and he's buried in the Ardennes American Cemetery in Belgium. He was decorated with the Soldier's Medal, the Air Medal with Oak Leaf Cluster, the Purple Heart with 2 oak leaf clusters. When we say Kaddish for First Lieutenant Ginsburg, we say Kaddish for all service personnel who either went missing in action or who were killed in action and who have a yortzeit this week. Mourner's Kaddish, page 58. Gadala v'yit Kadash Shemei Rabbah. Yalma Divra Kirute, Yamlich Malchute, V'chayechon uviomechon, Uvchaye Dechol Beit Israel, Ba'agala uvizman Kariv v'imru Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabbah Mevarach, Leolam u'lamei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach, v'yitpa'ar, v'yitramam, v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar, v'yitaleh, v'yitalal, Shemei Dekudisha V'rechu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran bi'alma v'imru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Before announcements, I just wanted to, from the bottom of my heart, welcome my two brothers, Rabbi Jeff Salkin and Imam Abdullah Antepli, who, as you know, are our scholars in residence throughout the weekend. It is just such a joy to have you with us. And we look forward to hearing you both share your thoughts at the first session, the first presentation this evening after dinner. Dinner will be held in the social hall. We're going to do motzi in the sanctuary. Anyone who'd like to take some challah in with them into the social hall, please feel free to do so. And then it'll be buffet style, and we'd like to expedite everyone getting dinner and sitting down and eating, because we've got about an hour, a little over an hour to eat. And we're going to return here to the sanctuary for the first talk, which will be held at 8 p.m. And now, I'd like to invite our president, Mickey Friedman, to share announcements.
Shabbat Shalom. Good news, I do have my glasses today. But I can't see out there with my glasses on. I can only read with them. Yasher Kalak, to Rabbi Herber and Josh Niehaus for beautifully leading the service. And our kids with the Shamru was very nice and very welcome. We're really looking forward to this weekend, so thank you for being here, and it should be a wonderful weekend. Quickly to announcements so you can get to your food. Havad Nashira, Wednesday, November 8th. That's this coming Wednesday, 11:30 to 12:30 in the H&T foyer. Inspired by the musical legacy of Cantor Kurland and the Nash and Sing program, we are launching a new monthly singing event. H&T Music and Program Director Josh Niehaus will lead a spirited song session filled with classical Israeli and Jewish songs and new ones as well. Snacks, coffee, and tea will be served. Feel free to bring a sack lunch. All food should be dairy or parb. Barnaby Point Town Hall sessions at H&T. There's two of them. The first one is this Thursday, November 9th at 7 p.m. And the second one is Sunday, November 19th at 10 a.m. They're basically covering the same topic. It's basically to get everybody up to speed on what's going on and giving you an ability to ask questions and just understand what's happening and give your thoughts. It's actually a great opportunity. The first one on Thursday will not be live stream. Thank you. So you need to be here to see it. If you can't make it, come on Sunday. Don't know yet whether that will be live stream. Assume not. So do the best you can to be here. Winter coat drive for Leshe Elementary and Root Shelter and FRS Whole Body Mitzvah Drive. This month we're joining the Social Action Committee in their coat drive. Needs are winter coat sizes youth, extra small, to adults, extra large, so the entire gamut. For Leshe, adult medium to adult extra large for Roots. Daytimers Fall Lunch and Film Series. Everything is illuminated Wednesday, November 15th, 11:30 to 2:30 p.m. at the H&T Feinberg Social Hall. It's a film about a young Jewish American man, Jonathan Safran Foer, who is interested in his family history. I read this. This is actually a really good book. He goes to Ukraine to learn about his grandfather's life, guided by a local. He seeks to shed light on what happened to his grandfather during World War II. Register on Shulcloud. Havdalah and Bunko Night. This is for the empty nesters, or I guess we call them the next chapter. I guess I'm the next chapter. Saturday, November 18th, 7 to 9 p.m., upper foyer. Once again, go online. The price is $18 per person. Register on Shulcloud. H&T Teens Seahawks Watch Party and Tailgate, Sunday, November 19th, 1 to 4 p.m. in the Social Hall. Watch the Seahawks play against the Rams. Let me rephrase it. Watch the Seahawks beat the Rams, play giant inflatable games. Hang out. Okay. Hang out with your friends and eat some good game day grub. Last one, Veteran Day flags, Friday, November 10th at 10:30 a.m. That's this Friday. In honor of Veterans Day, on Saturday, November 11th, flags will be placed at the graves of service members buried at Herzl Memorial Park in Shoreline. Please contact Marilyn Koritz to help place flags go online. I'm going to give you an email address. Nobody's going to remember it. Also contact Marilyn to confirm that a veteran buried at Herzl Memorial Park is on the list of 100+ names who served their country. That's it. Shabbat Shalom.
Nikki, it's nice that you brought your glasses. Next time bring yours, not Kathy's. Yigdal? Yeah. Yigdal, page 62.
Yigdal
Elohim chai ve'yishtabach nimtza v'yered el metziuto echad v'yen yachid ke'ichudo ne'lam v'gam ein sof le'achduto ein lo demut haguf ve'eino guf lo na'aroch elav kedushato kadmon l'chol davar asher nivra Reshit l'reshito Hino Adon Olam V'chol notza Yoreh gedulato Umalachuto Shefan nevuato Netano Elah anshe segulato V'tifarto Lo kam b'Yisrael Kemo she'od Naviu mahabid Et temunato Torat demet natan Le'amoel Al yad neviyo neman beito Lo yachal Yifa'el Velo yamir dato Le'olami lezulato Tzofeh v'yodea Setarenu Mabit l'sof davar Bekadmato Gomel le'ish chesed Kemif'alo Noten l'rasharav Kerishato Ishlach l'ketz yamin Meshichenu Liftot mechakeket Yeshuato Metim Yechayael Beroch Chazdo Baruch Adeheyad Shem Tehilato Metim Yechayael Beroch Chazdo Baruch Adeheyad Shem Tehilato. Rise. If you've RSVP'd for dinner, please join us in the social hall. Josh. What did I hear about the spring? About what?
or the Nosh and Sing?
Yeah. So our policy in the synagogue is no food being brought out.
Okay, I can send out a message
only
to.
outside.
I was told
The only place that we allow unactive food is in the roof line for staff.
Okay. Is that a new?
No?
I was just copying they said people brought lunches to Cantor Curlin's Nosh and Sing. The Nosh part is that they just brought their own food.
So the ritual committee, the first year I was here, changed the policy to what it used to be. That there are no different areas in the synagogue where people can bring food. So if you want to do
We have
that,
time. I can send out an
if you
email.
want to do that, I mean, is the youth lounge can do something like that? Where are you going to do it?
Just the foyer with all the. I think the youth lounge could absolutely work. So I think the two options would be I could tell people it's a mistake and don't bring lunch, go out to lunch afterwards, or I can do it in the youth lounge. You don't have to answer right now on one
Okay,
foot. I can
okay.
send out an email on Monday. Okay.
And I thought that send it around. go?
Do me a favor.
Give me
And I'm going to get Marvin. Shabbat Shalom. Good evening, everyone. Really delighted that you're all here. As many of you know, this Scholar in Residence weekend was actually rescheduled. It was supposed to be last spring, and Imam Antepli received a call from the U.S. State Department asking if he would go to Dubai to an international press conference to help promote the Abraham Accords, the accords between Israel and many of a growing number of Israel's Arab neighbors. And I said, well, it's a no-brainer, you have to go, but we have to reschedule. So we found another date this weekend, but as we say, and Barbara, forgive me, in Yiddish, man tracht und God lacht, right? That we plan and God laughs at our plans. So Rabbi Salkin and Imam Antepli and I came up with a whole menu of presentations for this weekend based on the, I think, really groundbreaking work that the two of them have been doing. I think, signed up right away, did I not, Rabbi Salkin? Rabbi Salkin publicized that they were doing the speaking tour together, and I said, put us on the list, because the work that they're both doing is so vitally important. And I use the word hero a lot. I have a lot of heroes. And you know how I feel about Rabbi Salkin, because this is the second time I'm bringing him here. And I brought him to my former congregation at least twice. Imam Antepli is a real hero of mine, because it's kind of hard to find men as courageous as he is, who are religious leaders and who are willing to speak the truth and to stand up for people and to say things that aren't necessarily popular to be said in one's own religious community. And if you want to look for a bridge builder, it's Imam Antepli. I mean, I can't, if we could clone him, and we could clone Rabbi Salkin and have them go around the world talking about how we should find ways of discovering commonality. And although we're different in many ways, there is so much that we share in common, so many core religious values that we share in common. And we come from the same tree, and yet we oftentimes find so many ways to accentuate the conflict and the difference between us. And Imam Antepli has gone out on many occasions on a very, very long limb and stood precipitously on ledges, because he's a man of principle, and he's a man of peace, and he's a man of love. And it's such an honor to have both dear friends of mine here. And we also share the Shalom Hartman Institute in common. And now I get to share both of them with you. And so thank you for being here, and hopefully you will come back tomorrow, and you'll come back on Sunday. For those of you who forgot who Rabbi Salkin is, which is kind of hard to do, and for those of you who don't know who Imam Antepli is, let me just spend a moment introducing them. Rabbi Jeffrey Salkin is one of America's American Judaism's most prolific rabbis, described as courageous, always relevant, and one of American Judaism's true public intellectuals. His column, Martini Judaism, for those who want to be shaken and stirred, published by the Religion News Service, has won several Wilbur Awards for Best Religion Column of the Year. Martini Judaism also appears as a podcast, and if you enjoy reading him, you're going to enjoy as much listening to him have really compelling conversations with thought leaders who are both nationally and internationally renowned. He delivered the keynote on spirituality at the Chautauqua Institute and has participated in interreligious dialogue with Christian and Muslim religious leaders. His essays have appeared in the Washington Post, in Commentary Magazine, the Wall Street Journal, Tablet, the Forward, and JTA. He's appeared on CNN and the BBC. He has contributed to scholarly volumes and encyclopedias. His 11 books have inspired vigorous conversations on such subjects as Jewish identity and culture, Israel, and gender, and he has written 3 Torah commentaries. His new book that's just coming out, Tikkun Ha'am, Repairing Our People, will be published in January by Wicked Sun Publishers. Rabbi David Wolpe of Los Angeles has said of the book, Tikkun Ha'am proves once again that Rabbi Jeffrey Salkin is among the wisest observers of our society and our souls, a rabbi who writes with humor, depth, and clarity. He is currently writing a book for the Reform Movement, a commentary for teens and Shabbat liturgy. Rabbi Salkin has served Reform congregations in Florida, Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, and Florida, and is currently retired from the full-time congregational rabbinate. Jeff, I'm really, really envious. He lives in West Palm Beach, Florida, and devotes his time to writing, biking, his friends and family, and consuming vast quantities of coffee. The last time I was here, I think we hit like 10 cafes. We were caffeine intoxicated by the time he left. And now to Imam Antepli. Imam Abdullah Antepli is a globally acknowledged leader in interreligious dialogue. He directs with Yossi Klein Halevi, the Shalom Hartman Institute's Muslim Leadership Initiative. Born in Turkey, he served as Duke University's first Muslim chaplain, its director of Center for Muslim Life, and teaches in the Duke Divinity School. The nonprofit Times recognized him as one of their Power and Influence top 50 leaders of 2019, calling him one of the most prominent Muslim leaders in higher education today. Imam Antepli is a recipient of many awards. Most recently, he was a recipient of the Anti-Defamation League's Daniel Pearl Award, which is an incredibly high honor and just speaks to the remarkable and crucial and noble work that he has done on behalf of building bridges between the American Jewish community and the Muslim community. It's now a great honor for me to welcome to the Bima Imam Antepli and Rabbi Salkin. Do you have one? Okay.
You can leave that one. Thank you for this incredibly generous and wonderful introduction. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Assalamu alaikum. It's a distinct honor and pleasure to be here, especially with my brother here. He's going to start us off, but I think it would be a remiss to even not mention the dark clouds that we are in, that breaks our hearts since October 7th, the barbaric savagery and the terrorism that broke out violence and war in the Middle East. It is really difficult even to articulate the depth of pain. What's going on there in the Middle East is bad enough, terrible enough, disgusting and despicable enough. All the innocent people losing their life and will continue to lose. What makes this even more difficult is the way that violence spilled over to the United States, the way it is discussed over here, the way that it fuels hate in the United States, especially on college campuses. So we have work to do. We have so much work to do. If this doesn't wake up from our slumber, a silent majority in Jewish communities and Muslim communities, I don't know what will. If this doesn't lead us into moral action, I don't know what will. So I am offering my condolences for the despicable, barbaric savagery took place and took 1,400 Israeli lives and causing war and taking even more innocent lives in their own community. There is nothing in the religion of Islam that could justify that barbarism. And no human suffering or no occupation would justify. This is something much deeper, and we have to open our eyes, and we will try our very best to do so here in this holy place.
I forgot one word. This is a off the record. Not the weekend, this is all off the record. So if there happens to be somebody from the press, off the record conversation. Thank you for saying that.
Salam, my brother.
Shalom.
First of all, it is wonderful to be back here, this remarkable house of God and of the human spirit. Be present once again with my dear friend, my brother, Rabbi Jacob Herber. He and I go back, I did a counting in my brain, perhaps 18 years, 18 summers and then some off summers as well, studying at the Hartman Institute and sharing life, our struggles, our triumphs. It is a blessing to have you in my life. And to you, Abdullah, my brother, this past almost month now, you have frequently been in my thoughts, and your community has been in my thoughts. There are many reasons why our sessions this weekend will be off the record. But one of the most important reasons, I think, is that you all need to really understand something. I've been active in interfaith conversation for my entire career. Much of it falls into the category of what I would call tea and sympathy, or Thanksgiving services the night before,
Or hummus.
or hummus, kumbaya. My friends, never before in your lives will you have witnessed a religious leader who has shown the moral strength and the courage to be here, this synagogue, in the midst of this community, with the myriad of pressures that face him from his own community, his own circle, and understanding that he operates not only as an imam, but as a father and as a husband. I want you to know that. Do not, for a nanosecond, take any of this for granted. This is raw stuff. To our young people who are here, I want you to remember this evening, this Shabbat, and as the years go on, I want you to remember that you were here at a very tender and important time, not only in Jewish history, but in world history, and that you encountered a man of deep faith and of great courage. I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about Imam Antepli. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Thank you, Adonai, for bringing us into intimacy. Thank you, Allah, for calling us into relationship, that we might share together words of Torah. People ask me all the time, why do you do this? Why is it that you choose to appear and travel with an imam and to do so as a religious individual, as a person who lifts up a text? There are three reasons. Number one, he's my friend. Number two, we are the children of Avraham and Ibrahim. We are cousins. Sometimes it has been hard for us as cousins to sit at the same table, but we are cousins nonetheless. As I love to tell people and tease them and provoke them, that, after all, is my job description in Martini Judaism, shaking and stirring people. If you looked at Christianity and if you looked at Islam critically, you would notice something. Jews and Muslims have more in common with each other and the way that they live their lives than do Jews and Christians. It is because we live in this mythological kingdom called the Judeo-Christian culture that we've brainwashed ourselves into thinking that. A number of years ago, my former sister-in-law was engaged to marry a young man who was the son of an imam from Morocco. My father-in-law of blessed memory was a secular Jew. He and I took him out for a walk. We wanted to learn about him. And he said that he prays to Allah 5 times a day, and that he studies the Quran daily. My secular Jewish father-in-law says, I don't get it. And I said, I do. His life was more similar to the way I live my life than some Jews I know. And the third reason is something really big. All of us have an investment in making sure that we do not, here's a big word, essentialize the other. By which I mean, let us abandon a conversation in which we say, Islam believes, ... All Muslims are, ... We should have known this about ourselves, we should know this about Christianity, and we should know this about Islam. And it's on us to say this. I know that's really paradoxical, because we are a hurting people. Shloshim is not yet up for October 7th. In my new book, I have said that October 7th has changed the American Jewish community perhaps forever. And we don't even know how much we've been changed. But certainly it is on us as faithful Jews to bring the temperature down. The late Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, whom you just honored, said something wonderful. He said, religion makes good people better and makes bad people worse. So let us pledge to make good people better. Now tonight what we're going to do, Abdullah and I, is we're going to jam. We're going to play the music of faith together.
We're going to walk into a bar.
We're going to walk into a bar, except that Abdullah will have nothing to drink.
I am the designated driver.
And we're going to study tonight a text from this week's parasha, this week's Torah portion, Vayera, in which Abraham's sons are born. As will turn out next week, he'll have even more sons. Abraham, we know, has 2 sons, You will recall that when Avram and Sarai last week experienced infertility, Sarai gives her Egyptian handmaiden Hagar to Avram so that he might have children with her. She becomes, as it were, the first surrogate mother. Sarai is jealous of this young woman walking around with a bulging belly and kicks her out into the wilderness. And that brings us to the text at the very beginning of our study. The angel of the Lord said to her further, she has gone out into the wilderness and she is crying, utterly bereft. Behold, you are with child and shall bear a son. You shall call him Ishmael, for the Lord has paid heed to your suffering. Yishmael, God has heard. He shall be a wild ass of a man, his hand against everyone, and everyone's hand against him. He shall dwell alongside of all his kinsmen, though the Hebrew there is problematic. It says that he will dwell al panei, either alongside of all his kinsmen or literally in the face of all his kinsmen. In other words, he'll get into your face. And then Hagar names God El Ra'i, the God who has seen me. What's interesting about Hagar is that Hagar is the first woman to have a child announced to her, and she's the only person in the entire Hebrew Bible, in fact, all of Judaism, who actually gives a name to God. It's a wonderful feminist text that she takes the power of naming. She actually names God. She's also the first person to cry. And I am convinced, by the way, that she makes a guest appearance in the Ten Commandments. Because when it says that on Shabbat you shall do no work, neither you or Amatcha, your maidservant, that is what Hagar is. I think she walks into the Ten Commandments, and it says, V'hager, and the stranger who lives in your midst. I like puns. Hager, if you take away the vowels, forgive me, there's a vowel movement. I waited all week to say that. Hager is what comes out, the stranger, Hagar, Hager. And then Ishmael is born, and if you turn the page to this week's Torah portion, Ishmael is born, and then Isaac is born, and they throw a weaning party for Isaac. You know, there's a chopped liver sculpture and everything. In fact, Adam Sandler is making a new movie. It's called You Are So Not Coming to My Weaning Party. And notice every time it refers to Hagar, it calls her Hagar HaMitzrit, the Hagar the Egyptian. One scholar actually suggests that the reason why we had to go into slavery in Egypt was as a kind of cosmic payback for how Sarah treats her Egyptian handmaiden, kicking her out into the wilderness. And what happens is that God says to Abraham that this child, Ishmael, will also become a great nation. And we know that Ishmael becomes, in our lore and in Muslim lore, becomes the ancestor of the Arab peoples and the progenitor, as it were, of the Muslim faith. Before I kick this over to Abdullah for a few minutes, I need to tell you a story that I've always loved to tell. Many years ago, I went to Petra in Jordan. I'm sure some of you have been there. You know, it was one of the wealthiest cities of the ancient world. It was built by the Nabateans. It really should have been one of the wonders of the ancient world, but you know, it's who you know. And I remember being at Petra, and this Bedouin child is leading me into the canyon on horseback. And he says to me, couldn't have been older than 8 or 9. He said, so what do you do? This kid's like, he's networking with me. I said, I'm a rabbi. He said, what's that? Now, how would you explain being a rabbi to an 8-year-old Bedouin child in Jordan? So I said to him, with all due respect, it's like being an imam for the Jews.
Yep, spot on.
And he said, that's a good job. He said, what do you do in your job? And I said, I tell stories. If you have to boil the job of being a rabbi down to the level that an 8-year-old Bedouin child would understand. I do pastoral counseling. I'm the CEO of a synagogue. I train kids for bar mitzvah, maybe, bat mitzvah. I say, tell stories. He said, what stories do you tell? I said, I tell stories about Ibrahim, Yaqub, Musa, Daud, Suleiman. You could probably tell who all those characters were. That's the names that they have in the Quran. Yusuf. And then he looks at me and he says, you tell the stories of Ismail and Ajara, of Ishmael and Hagar. And I said, I tell those stories all the time. And he looks out into the wilderness and he says, I'm really glad. Those are the best stories of them all. We are here on this weekend because the texts of the Torah, which show up again in the Quran in different versions, are our bridge. They are a bridge between our peoples and our faiths. And I believe that when we tell those stories, we create sparks of light and of compassion that exist between our peoples and will be fanned into flame. My brother.
And as we do that, we would like to understand why House of Ishmael and Isaac in such unimpressive situation right now. We would like to understand, after not only, as Rabbi Salkin said, there is no two religions similar to Judaism and Islam. But it's not only theological, scriptural, monotheistic similarities of the two religions. If you halachically and Sharia, if you study these legal, normative sense of Judaism and Islam, it's almost two different denominations. But the similarity is not just in abstract. It is also in the history. If you look, if anybody studies Jewish Christian history seriously for 20 minutes, they would laugh at the concept of Judeo-Christian civilization. If you study this religion, to say that these people actually jointly, cohesively, harmoniously produced a civilization, I don't know. It's a stretch. There are so many historical evidence against that cohesion, especially as the Christian anti-Semitism is making its comeback. That last couple of decades delusional belief that somehow those 2,000 years of hate and hatred that moved into the very heart of this religion somehow just went away. I hope at least eventually it will bring the kind of wake-up call for those of us who sort of bought into that Kool-Aid. But one can really study and argue Judeo-Islamic civilization, Judeo-Islamic civilization based on shared not only theological and religious moral ethical framework, but also shared on joint history based on the stories that this last week and this week that you have studied and many weeks to come. That Bedouin child, they know exactly what Rabbi Sultan says because Solomon, Moses, David, Isaac, and Ishmael, as a whole family of Abraham, means something to them. It shapes their imagination. Their entire Islam has been completely shaped by this. And no one plays as significant role as Hagar and Ishmael. Because Hagar is the second woman who is considered and debated to be a prophet of God after Eve. And Hagar and Ishmael's story is slightly more feministic even, told in the Islamic tradition. In the Islamic version of the story, there was no fight between Sarah and Hagar. They went along just fine. It was one more attempt for God to test the faith of Abraham. God tested Abraham's faith, obedience, his loyalty, so that God wanted to create and exemplify a model for the rest of the humanity. God was trying to purify Abraham, that for only son that he has, Ishmael, and Hagar wanted to be left alone in the desert. And in the story, when they come from Jerusalem to Mecca and to be left alone, Hagar asks one question to Abraham. Is this God's testing you? Is this God's will? Abraham says, yes. Then go back to the house of Sarah. That God will not leave me, not abandon me. That God will keep me and my child here. And as you know, the famous story of the miraculous waters found, and they found the nurture, and then the Arab nation, and the second branch of the Semitic nation. Muhammad is the direct descendant of Ishmael. But maybe it's slightly differently, even though Muslims see themselves as the lineage and the continuation descendant of Ishmael, the ownership of the remaining families and cousins is incredibly strong. Isaac is the second most common name for sons in the Arab world after Muhammad. If you say Muhammad, there will be 100 heads turning. If you say Isaac, 80 heads turning. So for Muslims, Muhammad and Isaac is the same. It's part of the same family. It's part of the same family. And Moses is the same. David is the same. The Solomon is the same. So what went wrong if these two traditions not only come from a same frame of ethical moral imagination, same one God, monotheism, and if you look at the history of the 1400 years of Jewish-Muslim relations, our relationship was not rosy. It was an egalitarian 21st century democratic equal society. But compared to anywhere else Jews ever lived, it was an incredible, there were episodes of centuries-long joint civilization, producing music, culture, cuisine, text, spirituality, architecture, any aspect of economy, foreign relations, national security. It was jointly done for many centuries by many Jews and Muslims together. So maybe some of the answers of the relative success of the past is in these stories. And maybe some of the current contemporary depressive situation that we are in, where our children of Isaac and Ishmael is, at best, they don't have any relationship. At worst, they are at war with one another, both in the Middle East as well as over here. Maybe we need to retell these stories. Maybe we need to re-articulate these stories as best as we can.
One of the projects that I have been engaging in is trying to use the character of Ishmael, again, as a textual bridge between our two faith communities. Because I have this crazy, naive, childlike idea that if Jews and Muslims actually sat down and studied text together, that would create an overarching sense of salam and shalom between us, not on a global level, but perhaps on a local communal level. It's really hard to dislike someone that you're studying with. It's really hard to hate someone if you see yourself in that person's eyes and if you read yourself in that person's sacred narrative. And so I go back to the text that I handed out to you, and if you turn to page 3 for a moment, you'll see a very interesting and overlooked aspect to the Joseph story. We're jumping ahead now several generations. Most people know the story of Joseph. They know about how his brothers sold him into slavery in Egypt. There is a textual problem that has been staring us in the face, for about 2,500 years. So they throw Joseph into the pit. We're on page 3. Then they sat down to a meal. Looking up, they saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead, their camels bearing gum, balm, and ladanum to be taken to Egypt. Then Judah said to his brothers, "What do we gain by killing our brother and covering up his blood?" We are about to have the first Jewish fundraiser. "Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites. But let us not do away with him ourselves. After all, he is our brother, our own flesh." His brothers agreed. I must say to you, my friends, this has been staring me in the face ever since I was a child. But notice something. When Midianite traders passed by, they pulled Joseph up out of the pit. They sold Joseph for 20 pieces of silver to the Ishmaelites, who brought Joseph to Egypt. Now, if you let your eyes wander back to page 2, I'm going to show you a little something here that you would never have seen, because we like to skip over the begats. Abraham, Kainahora, after Sarah died, took another wife, whose name was Keturah. Now, the word Keturah comes from the word Ketoret, which means frankincense. So it is possible that the family was in the frankincense business. The Midrash says that Keturah was Hagar, that Abraham reunited with Hagar and brought her back. There is something happening here. She bore him, and this is the part that might bore you, she bore him Zimran, Yokshan, Midan, Midian, Ishbak, and Shua. Wait, really? Midian? The Midianites are therefore also our cousins, which is interesting because the most famous Midianite in the Torah would be Jethro, the father-in-law of Moses. That moment actually is sort of like a cosmic tikkun of the family. Now, it does go and say here that Abraham gave everything he owned to Isaac, but to Abraham's sons by concubines, he gave them gifts, he sent them away. Just drop me a line on Father's Day. And it says that when he died, his sons Isaac and Ishmael buried him together. They came together for that funeral. Now, the point I'm trying to make is simply this. Do we know who sold and who bought Joseph? And does it matter? I will suggest to you that it does matter. I will suggest to you that when the brothers think that they're selling Joseph to the Ishmaelites, this is a sale from within the family of Abraham. I wrote my own little midrash on this. We can almost hear the Ishmaelites muttering to each other. Well, well, well. If it isn't Joseph, as in the son of Jacob, the grandson of Isaac, the great-grandson of Abraham and Sarah, whom, let us remember, had a slave named Hagar, whose son Ishmael was our ancestor. And these boys want to sell him into slavery. Isn't that touching? Well, boys, it's time for a little payback. What goes around comes around. Let's see how he likes being a slave. But as soon as I wrote that, I said, nah. No, I would like to believe that the Ishmaelites took special care of Joseph. They made sure that he was safe and that he wound up in a place that would allow him to show his talents, that they brought him down to Egypt. This whole selling him to the Midianites, that was also within the family. Joseph never left the family. They all took care of him. They were part of this process of repair. To you, my brother.
There is no records in the Islamic tradition whether or not Ishmael or Hagar ever reconnected with Abraham, even at Abraham's funeral. But there are records after records, as you will see in page 6. Abraham comes back very often from Jerusalem to Mecca. And in one of those visits, it is not here, but maybe we'll include later, another test of God commands Abraham. God says, take Hagar and Ishmael and leave them there. And Abraham obeys. Abraham fulfills God's wish. But Abraham comes back often and visits Hagar and Ishmael. In one of those visits, God commands Abraham, build me a house of worship. Build me the first monotheism. That black cubicle that Muslims circle around when they go to pilgrimage and Hajj, that's when it was built. So this story shaped Islam as we know it. Every Muslim pray 5 times a day, like your brother-in-law. They 5 times a day turn their face to Kaaba. This story lives on a daily basis, that we are descendants of Ishmael and Hagar, and then therefore Abraham at the same time. These stories shaped Islam as we know it. Then this comes the sacrifice. According to Islamic tradition, that story took place in Mecca, not in Jerusalem. And the son was not Isaac, but it was Ishmael. If you follow the patterns of pilgrimage and Hajj, when millions of Muslims go there for the last 1,400 years, it was never interrupted, even during the COVID years. Muslims followed the footsteps of Hagar and Ishmael in every step of the way. But when it happened, when Muslims treated Jewish minorities much more gracefully and mercifully than the Christian Europeans, they weren't necessarily innately or inherently more peaceful, or Europeans were inherently more violent. It was these stories that gave the legitimacy, the value, and the worth of those relationships that tamed Muslim control or hegemony. And therefore, that's why the Jewish communities, more or less, throughout the centuries, they thrived under Muslim control.
Well, sort of, kind of. To be fair, Ishmael also gets a certain amount of, well, to quote Rodney Dangerfield, sometimes he gets no respect. It's interesting. When the armies of Muhammad conquer the Middle East in the 5th century and the 6th century, it leaves its thumbprint on all of those peoples. And so Ishmael becomes a code word within Judaism for the Arabs and for the Muslims. And I kind of went through every single tradition on Ishmael that I could find. And sometimes he is portrayed as a warrior, as a hostile person. We would understand that.
Like Esau and his descendants.
Like Esau, for example. But as I put together all the stories and all the teachings I could find, I figured something out. The Talmud says that if you ever see Ishmael in a dream, it means that your prayers will be answered by God. In the Talmud, it also says that when Ishmael is almost dying in the wilderness, and God hears the cries of the child, Ba'asher Husham, in the place where he is, and God allows a spring of water to come forth and to nurture and to nourish him. By the way, you all know this story. See, Reform Jews don't know this story because on the first day of Rosh Hashanah, we usually read the Akedah, we read the binding of Isaac. On the second day, we read the story of creation, which I've never loved, by the way, but that's just me. In conservative and Orthodox synagogues, on the first day of Rosh Hashanah, you read the story of Hagar and Ishmael. The second day of Rosh Hashanah, you read the story of the Akedah. Both stories, by the way, are very similar. In both stories, you have a boy who is cast out into the wilderness, who almost dies and is miraculously saved. And so in the Talmud, it says that God hears the voice of the child where he is. The Midrash is stunning on this. The backstory is that the angels say to God, let him die. His descendants are going to be very problematic. I read this Midrash, and it goes right into my guts. And God says to the angels, this child now, is he innocent or guilty? And the angels say, he's innocent. And God says, I hear the cries of the child where he is now, not how his descendants will be. And that is a way for Judaism to say that we judge people by who they are, at the moment where they are. We have no hereditary guilt in Judaism. And I think, by the way, that's probably the reason why that text was chosen as the Torah reading for the first day of Rosh Hashanah. There is something I'd like to teach, and to me it's so precious. I want to make sure, Abdullah, that you have the last word. So I want to teach you this. It's on page 4. This is such a beautiful teaching, and I've preached it in the past. And I think during this season and during what we are going through in the world, it's even that much more important. Tomorrow morning, as I put on the talit, as we all put on the talit when we pray, we will say, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehitatef batzitzit. Thank you, Adonai, for teaching us to wrap ourselves, envelop ourselves in the ritual fringes. By the way, the word lehitatef, atifat, is found now, sadly, in Otef Aza, in the so-called Aza envelope, the communities that are right outside of Aza or Gaza. The Chafetz Chaim came up with a very interesting teaching. Now you have to know something about him. The Chafetz Chaim was a sage who lived in Poland in the 1800s, and he was a great teacher of the movement in Judaism that we know as Musar, of great ethical exaltation and ethical introspection. And his note on the blessing says the following. His instruction on what you should do when you put on the talit is remarkable. It says that you must lift up the corners of your talit around your neck and wrap yourself ka'atifat Yishma'alim, in the way that the Ishmaelites wrap themselves. In other words, when you put on the talit, you first wrap it around your head and then around your neck so that it resembles a kafiyah, traditional Arab headdress. And then you let it fall onto your shoulders. I want you to sit with that for a moment. Because here we have this sage who lives in Poland, and I don't know if he ever saw an Arab. I mean, it was years before Lawrence of Arabia came out. I don't know if he'd seen photographs or heard stories, but here's what he's saying. Ishmael, in the book of Genesis, is kicked out of our people. He's a refugee of the covenant. But when the pious Jew prays, for a moment, what do? We bring him back. We imagine ourselves to be a descendant of Ishmael. I place these texts in front of you because I think they have something very large and loud to say. I've thought of publishing these words in recent weeks, counseled by some people not to do it. The Jews on the right would excoriate me. People on the left would excoriate me. You can't win. But as my teacher and my brother, Abdullah Antepli, said to me, you got to speak your truth. The truth that we must proclaim at this particular moment is simply this. I think this tradition that we embrace and that we love cries out for compassion, and it cries out for us to pry open the gates of the heart precisely at those times when those gates can be shut. That is not a political statement. Anyone who knows me knows that I'm kind of a center-right on a lot of things. In the last couple of weeks, I've been pushed even further to the right. That's a whole different conversation. I think it's up to us as serious religious Jews and Muslims to fight against the darker tendencies that might confront us and to speak out for a religious truth in which we are constantly working to see the other as B'Tselem Elohim, B'Tselem Allah, to see the other as being made in the image of God. In good times, it's easy to do that. In hard times, it's that much more difficult. But we are called upon by God and our tradition to engage in moral calisthenics. This isn't easy. We are Yisrael. We are the people who wrestle with God. And so every time I put on the Tallit, I imagine for a moment that I've called Ishmael back into the fold. You, my brother.
That could have been a wonderful ending. If we keep you guys here until midnight, nobody will come tomorrow for the services.
That is true.
We would like to sort of continue the conversation tomorrow. As an imam who came to this country after 9/11, I fell in love with America and Americans. I think in so many ways, despite its all flaws, this country is still one of the most successful attempts in understanding God's creation of difference. It is the most successful attempt to create a multicultural, multilingual, multi-layered society where difference is a source of celebration. Difference is a source of learning, inspiration. That's at least technically, if you look at our 250 years of experience. But it always baffled me why so many Americans misunderstood Islam. Yes, there is terrorism, yes, 9/11, but these people are otherwise very sophisticated, very educated. They understand, they read the world, etc. I came to the realization for many Americans, both Jewish, Christian, and otherwise, they must understand Islam because maybe partially because they misunderstand their own religion. They misunderstand Islam because they misunderstand their own Judaism and their own Christianity, whatever they thought to assume. Similarly, as seeing Muslim anti-Semitism on the rise, and regretfully even worse now than 10 years ago, how did we Muslims misunderstood Jews? It is primarily there I feel I speak even more strongly and much more authority. We misunderstood Judaism we became vulnerable to Muslim anti-Semitism and allowing this hate to go unchallenged primarily because we misunderstood Islam. If we want to eliminate hate, bigotry, part of the solution is relearning your own story, or learning in a way that doesn't produce hate and bigotry. Telling that story or retelling it in a way that doesn't produce prejudice, bigotry, or inferiority or superiority, division, that you put this down and you put that high. And that's what we are trying to do, trying to model this in one way or another. Because ultimately, if you want behavioral change individually or collectively, if you want yourself or anybody to change, that change always starts in the ideas, in the concepts. Without changing the minds, behavioral change is impossible. For the monumental, seismic difficulties that we are facing today as Jews and Muslims, both in the Middle East and here, that change doesn't start, behavioral change, collective action change. It doesn't happen if you don't learn how to retell our stories or find out the elements of toxicity. The way Jesus on the cross pumped anti-Semitism centuries to Christian hearts, there are some toxicity in these stories that is teaching anti-Arab racism and Islamophobia to Jews and teaching anti-Semitism, dark anti-Semitism, much more greater scale, unfortunately, to many Muslims, corrupting their hearts as well. So let's, in our attempt to defeat hate, defeat darkness with light, that's primarily not an external journey. It's an internal journey. Let's look into each other's traditions and learn how to teach stories correctly. Thank you, and looking forward to engaging with your questions.
Let's take some questions, yes? We have time for questions, Rabbi.
I hope so. And I have to say, there is no ignorant question, silly question, stupid question, offensive question. You can ask anything.
Do you only want questions on what you two talked about, or can I go broader?
You can go broader.
Okay.
Go broader,
So-
go broader, be careful, be kind.
So since we Muslims and Jewish people claim that part of the world, both of our peoples, and have such different journeys in getting to the fact that that is our homeland from a long time ago, and so many wars and hate on the way, do you see any path toward untangling? You just said to learn our stories and relearn our stories.
Right.
Do you see any path that these two peoples can live side by side?
Of course I do. I think both Judaism and Islam, despite the thickness of crime and violence, what we are warned against is despair. I think it's Rabbi Nachman says there is no greater sin than despair or hopelessness. And according to Islam, other than associating partners to God, the second greatest sin is to fall into despair and hopelessness. But the scale of the problem is so seismic, so big, it seems it passed beyond human capacity. We need divine intervention. What activates divine intervention whenever God intervenes in human history is a group of people working as hard as possible, even though planting seeds when tsunami is coming seems futile. And I know no other solution than education. I know no other solution than education, creating pipelines of education to future Jewish and Muslim leaders. That's what I do at Shalom Hartman Institute. I bring groups of Muslim leaders to learn about Judaism, Zionism, and Israel with no obligation to agree or like. If we can scale these kind of educational programs, if we can allow it to influence our curriculums in our Sunday schools, in our synagogue schools, that is the only hope. That's the only solution.
From my point of view, I want to just add to what Abdullah just said. knowing that the name of this child is Ishmael, Yishmael, God will listen. I want to take that element of his name, Shama, Yishma, to listen and to hear, and blow it up. I think what's very important, and I think what's behind what Imam Antepli has said, is the mutual mitzvah that I've been promoting for years, which is that Jews and, let us say, Palestinians need to hear each other's stories. We need to develop a sense of compassion for what we have gone through. This is what our brother, Yossi Klein Halevi, writes about so beautifully in his book, Letters to My Palestinian Neighbor. I said to someone the other day that I, as a Jew, am called upon to feel compassion for the Palestinian who still carries the keys to his home in Jaffa or in Yerushalayim in his pocket. And I expect, not would like, expect that person, that Palestinian, to hear the story of the Iraqi Jew who carries the keys to her home from Baghdad, from the Farhud in 1941. In other words, we need to hear each other's pain, and we need to hear each other's dreams, and we need to hear each other's hopes. I'm enough of a wild-eyed kid, optimistic and hopeful, to believe that when we hear those stories in a one-to-one situation, that it creates seeds of compassion and of empathy. I think we are locked in a tragedy, a Shakespearean tragedy now of monumental proportions. I want to take Hamas out of the picture. Let's take Gaza out of the picture. Let's go to the West Bank for a moment. What we have are two peoples who love the same land, full stop, end of sentence. What do we do about that? By the way, this is not a rhetorical question. This is an open question. I don't expect anyone here to have that answer, but that is the existential question. Once we say we have two peoples who love the same land, and if we strip away what happened in 1947, history is very important. History is not irrelevant here. But in human relationships, I think we have to try to transcend that. And what Abdullah and I have successfully done over the years is we've heard each other's stories, we've shared each other's triumphs and each other's tragedies, and we want to move both Jews and Muslims to a place that goes beyond that. We know it can happen because we know that it does happen all the time.
And one of the greatest injustices being done, understanding land in this most reductionist and literalist sense. People who thought this was just a land dispute, if you give a little bit of this to that and give a little bit more to the others, they failed over and over. I don't know how many more failed peace processes that we need to go through that. This is the sanctity of the land, this land's connection to the divine. It is not just the land itself, but the kind of identities, that deep identities that we have developed, the stories that we have developed out of this land. We are not hearing each other's stories in that way.
But let us also be blunt and let us be honest, as Abdullah and I have said. Make no mistake about it. If this current conflict had emerged out of the West Bank, you could hear a narrative that it's about the land. This is about raw, unmitigated, unprocessed, medieval anti-Semitism. That's what it is. That's what we're experiencing on college campuses. That's what we're experiencing all over the world right now. And many of us have been in denial over this. We cannot be in denial about this anymore. And as I was saying to Abdullah earlier at dinner, and as Rabbi Herber and I were talking about, I have a list of things that the American Jewish community is going to start thinking about and worrying about once we start cleaning up from this. Among those things is this, and I say this to Abdullah, who works full-time on a college campus. I'm really glad there are no reporters here. We American Jews, perhaps more than any other immigrant group in this country, put our emunah shlema, our full faith in the power of higher education and the university. The university became our temple. The last several weeks, we have seen the crashing and the burning of the moral authority of the universities. Again, make no mistake about it. Students who are being criticized for their actions are not being criticized for having the wrong opinions on the Israel-Palestinian dispute. About having different opinions, we can all live with that. They're being criticized, and by the way, note the letter signed by the principals of many major law firms in this country saying to people who are applying to such jobs, they're being told that their moral reasoning is askew. This is not about having a bad opinion about land. This is about having the wrong opinion about the value of human life. And we have never in this country seen anything quite like it. And it's up to us to decry it.
Let's take one more question, maybe. What time is it?
10 after 9. Oh, 10 after.
The evening is still fresh. And your name?
My name is Greg Wagner. So earlier you mentioned that both communities, the descendants of Isaac, the descendants of Ishmael, they got along very well, coexisted very well.
What the heck is wrong with us?
Was there a specific or what kind of turning point really drove the wedge between them that we're now still dealing with today?
Well, let me say this. It's like that thing on Facebook, relationship, complicated. It is certainly the case that Jews fared better in Muslim societies than they did in Christian societies. Now there's an asterisk at the bottom of the page. Depending on the place, depending on the ruler, depending on the time. This is what I was talking about earlier when I say that we can't essentialize this history because, as Tip O'Neill put it, all politics was local. So what happened in Morocco in the 18th century was different from what happened in Tunisia in the 19th century, and very different from what's happening in Turkey today. So a lot of it depended on the whim and the personality of the ruler and of the time. That is a way of saying that there was no particular moment when it all went awry. Very different in many different places. If I understand Islam correctly, Islam does not have, though certainly radical Islamists have found those texts that are rather ugly about the Jews, does not have baked into it what Jules Isaac called the teaching of contempt that would have been found in the very seeds of the Christian church. It doesn't quite work that way, but it hasn't always been nice. When it's been good, it's been great. I don't think there was a moment where it just went all downhill. Am I right?
You are until 1948. Things hit the fan then in Jewish-Muslim relations. This is a sacred place. I cannot use those kind of analogies. But in one of the interfaith gatherings, in a much more ceremonial and kumbaya way, when we were talking about Jews, Christians, Muslims, Abraham, Isaac, Ishmael, we are all family, one of the Hindu speakers said, boy, what a dysfunctional family. Like part of dysfunctionality is really coming from the family roots, family feud and family dispute. What really shattered Jewish-Muslim relations is the way in which creation of the state of Israel perceived in the Muslim world. It's perception. What is for many of you a homecoming story? You are coming back to home, your ancestral home, and 2,000 years of exile is ending. It was perceived in the Muslim, not only Palestinian or Arab, in the imagination, for a collapsed civilization after 200-300 years of European colonization, waves of crusaders, another Western assault in humiliating, already humiliated Muslim civilization over and over again, inserting almost like a dagger into the heart of Islam as a Western, secular, non-Islamic. That's why in Jewish-Muslim relations, we should never shy away from studying, understanding Judaism, but also Zionism and Israel as well. If we cannot figure out what Zionism is and isn't, if we cannot figure out what Israel is and isn't, and if we cannot come to terms, this will never be repaired. Our educational focus should be right there. That's where things went wrong.
All good. If you can pass your sheets over, where? We'll use them again tomorrow.
Please come back.
Please come back.
Have a good night's sleep.
This will not be on the final. Thank you all for being here. Shabbat Shalom.
To be continued, and Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. We'll see you tomorrow, 10 a.m. tomorrow morning.